Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me today as we begin our journey into learning a little bit more about history and government and politics and many other interests that I have that we'll talk about and use this channel to talk about. Today we're going to start talking about Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania government. We'll talk a little bit about local government from time to time, but we're not going to dwell on it much because every township, every borough, every municipality around Pennsylvania and around this country is organized differently. So it doesn't really benefit talking much about local government, but if you want to, we'll definitely talk about it and we'll see where we go from there. I just want to kind of start out with just a few things to kind of an introduction, and then we'll lead into what we're going to talk about today. I have a few things. You'll have to pardon me. I don't have an official whiteboard yet. I'm going to definitely purchase one, but this will at least allow you to have a basic understanding of what we're talking about. I have a tendency of talking with my hands a lot, so sometimes this gives me an opportunity to explain a little bit more. I do have, today is the 3rd, this is our first session. We're going to do it about 2 days a week. That may change. I'm looking at possibly maybe just 1 day a week, but posting twice on both Facebook as well as on the YouTube. But as I said, we're going to deviate a little bit this time. We're not going to really talk about Pennsylvania government today. We're going to start talking about William Penn. You really can't understand Pennsylvania government and how our Constitution is written if we don't have at least a little bit of basic information about William Penn and how we became Pennsylvanians. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we do that, though, I want to update something for you. I do have a Facebook page set up. It's Chad Andrew George, 3 separate words. Like I said, I'll post videos of this on it. I'll also keep you updated about what's happening around the world and around the country. As I said, I'm using this for all my interests, so it's going to be a little bit of everything in it. But you want to check up on that from time to time. If there's any kind of scheduling issues, I'll be posting that on Facebook as well. But it is a tool in which we can keep updated as to what's happening around the world, the country, the state. I am encouraging you to email me. My email address is chadandrewgeorge@hotmail.com. It's all one word, all lowercase. Please feel free to email me anytime. I have a policy. I return emails within 24 hours. But if you have questions, if you want to gauge, what my opinions are about something, if you have questions about anything, please use that email to contact me. If you want to talk about anything, state government, local government, federal government, whatever, please let me know. And this is our session for the next 2 days, or the next, for tomorrow as well as next week. Tomorrow we're going to continue talking about William Penn. As I said, I want to keep these about a half an hour in length, maybe an hour, but at least a half an hour. We got a lot to accomplish in William Penn, so it may be enough to take us into 2 full videos. But today we're going to talk about William Penn, or tomorrow we're going to talk about, today we're going to talk about William Penn. Tomorrow we're going to talk about William Penn. And then on the 10th we're going to talk about the Pennsylvania State Constitution. We're going to begin our talk. And then we're going to wrap it up next Wednesday with it again, as well as at least starting to talk a little bit about Pennsylvania government and how it's organized. So that gives you a little bit on what we're going to do. I am working on a website. It isn't done yet. It isn't even near done yet. So I'm hoping to get that active either today or tomorrow, or this week or next week. I did talk to you about videos. We are encouraging you to tell people about our video, our pages, our website once it's up, our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, so that everyone can get involved. And I talked to you a little bit already about emails. So that is where we stand. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know. But this is a little bit about where we're going to go from here. What I'm going to do now is, as I said, this is a calendar board, if you will, but it's a whiteboard. But I'm going to be working on trying to get a board for future videos. We're going to talk, as I said today, a little bit about William Penn. I do have a picture of William Penn. This is William Penn, the founder of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And this is who we're going to talk about today and tomorrow. Very important man, a very religious man, and a very activist man for his day and age. So we're going to talk about him. But in order to start talking about William Penn, we also have to kind of consider how we got here in Pennsylvania. And that's where we'll begin with a man by the name of King Charles. And as I said, I hope you can read this. And you'll have to excuse my handwriting. King Charles. King Charles was Britain's king at the time. King Charles reigned from 1660 until 1685. That was his reign. He was also known as the Merry Monarch. That was what he was known as, the Merry Monarch. And why he was known as the Merry Monarch was that he brought normalcy back to England. Prior to King Charles' reign, the British had been through some horrific events. There was a deposing of the English crown. We had a man come in by the name of Oliver Cromwell, and you definitely will, I know, remember that name. Oliver Cromwell came in and totally destroyed the British government. And he was joined by another group of people in which we have heard about, the Puritans. The Puritans were also in the eyes of the Cromwell government. So let me just write this so that we can read it. I have different colored markers here. But we had Oliver Cromwell, we have Oliver Cromwell and the Puritans. Now remember, the Puritans were the ones that came over to the United States, over to Plymouth, the Puritans. But after the rule of Oliver Cromwell and the Puritans, as well as the English Civil War, the English also had a civil war, which brought in Oliver Cromwell and the Puritans as well. After the overthrow of Oliver Cromwell, then came King Charles II. King Charles I was executed. And then Charles II came in. Charles II had no legitimate children. He had many illegitimate children, but he had no legitimate children to the throne. So that gives you a little bit of an update on who Charles was. And I'll let you actually see a picture of King Charles. This is a portrait of King Charles II. So that makes you at least be able to recognize a name with a face. So now we're at a time in which we have a basic premise on who King Charles was. So that's a name we definitely want to remember, because that is a very important name. to put up here names. So we now have King Charles the second. Okay? Now we enter another man by the name of William Penn. William Penn. One thing that a lot of schools don't do today is I don't think they teach enough about William Penn or who he was. But we're going to talk a little bit about William Penn because he was a very interesting person. William Penn lived from 1644 until 1718. He was born in London. He died in Berkshire. William Penn was married twice. Everyone will remember his second wife. His second wife was Hannah Penn. Not too long ago, Governor Corbett, when he was in office, he had actually commissioned a portrait to honor Hannah Penn because she was the first female governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. She did manage the day-to-day, or did help with Pennsylvania after William Penn had passed. Between his two wives, he had a total of 16 children. Now, not all lived past infancy, some were miscarriages, but he had a total of 16. He had 7 children with his first wife and 9 children with his second wife as well. So now we know a little bit about the basics of William Penn. And again, this is William Penn. William Penn was a Quaker. And we'll learn a little bit about how he dealt with King Charles. So now we have some more names to add. We have a name to add. We have William Penn. We have William Penn. And we have Hannah Penn to add to the list. So now we have to take a look at what is the relationship between William Penn and King Charles II. What was their relationship? Were they friends? Were they enemies? Were they amicable? You know, how was their relationship? Well, William Penn wrote several pamphlets. He was a prolific pamphlet writer. He wrote the pamphlets to criticize the many religious groups except the Quakers. Because remember, Penn was a Quaker. So Penn was a Quaker. He wrote his first pamphlet in 1668. This was the first pamphlet. And that pamphlet was called Truth Exalted to Princes, Peace, Priests, and People. And I think this is absolutely a wonderful phrase. But Penn branded the Catholic Church as the horror of Babylon. That's what he actually classified the Catholic Church as, the horror of Babylon. He had no good for the Catholics. He called the Church of England, so there's the Catholics. Now you have the Church of England, in which he classified them as hypocrites and revelers in God. So now he's offended the Catholics. He's also now offended the Church of England, which were the two main churches in England at the time. So, since he defied the Church of England, now you have him against King Charles. King Charles didn't like it. So what King Charles did was King Charles had him arrested. And he was imprisoned. And his charge was blasphemy. That was his charge, was blasphemy. So while he was imprisoned, Penn was given a paper in hopes that he would recant everything he said. That was what the king was hoping. That was what his jailers were hoping he would do. What he would actually recant everything he had said in that first pamphlet. He only at that time wrote one pamphlet. So they were hoping that in that first pamphlet he would recant everything that he said. Well, he didn't. He went on to write another pamphlet called No Cross, No Crown. That was the other one that he wrote. Now, from this charge, he was released after 8 months. He was just released. There was no trial, nothing like that. He was released. And I found an interesting quote about that. Penn had petitioned an audience with the king, which of course he was denied. The king didn't want to see William Penn, but William Penn really wanted to see the king to actually express to him his grievances towards him. But anyways, he was denied, and it led to negotiations on his behalf by one of the royal chaplains. And Penn bravely declared, quote, "My prison shall be my grave before I will budge a jot, for I owe my conscience to no mortal man," unquote. And he was released due to the negotiations between the crown and this royal chaplain. But just because he was released didn't mean that he went back and remained quiet and lived about his daily life. He didn't. He went back and he was more determined to see wrongs righted and to at least express to people his views and his opinions. And to remember, at this time, not many people read. Not too many people were able to pick up a newspaper or some kind of a manuscript of some type and read it. It was still people telling other people what to do, and that word of mouth went right down the line. So now here you have Penn, who is writing all these pamphlets. And Penn's writing these pamphlets. He's now released due to the negotiation between the royal chaplain and the crown. And Penn would not recant anything. He stood firm on what he had written in those pamphlets. So what the crown decided to do is, okay, if William Penn isn't going to recant his stuff that he's talking about, and what he's writing about in his pamphlets, we're going to come in and we're going to start confiscating his property. Now, William Penn was a wealthy man. His father has been very sick during this entire time. They don't believe he's going to live much longer. And I'm sure some of this, if you would kind of think about it in today's thinking, I'm sure a lot of what was happening to William Penn was probably weighing very heavy on the mind and the heart of the elder Penn, who had been a big supporter of the king. They were aristocratic, if you would. They weren't part of the aristocracy, but they were definitely wealthy. They owned a lot a lot of property. So that's what the king was doing. The crown was doing. They were coming in and they were confiscating his property. Thousands of Quakers now were put in jail. Thousands of Quakers. Remember, there were only really two religions in England at that time. Two recognized religions, the Catholics and the Church of England. There were no place for the Quakers. None. I'm not saying the Quakers weren't welcome, but there were no place for the Quakers in England. Remember, the Quakers believed in simple living. A little bit, I guess you could kind of compare them to the Amish here in Lancaster County. A simple way of living. You don't need to be all glitz and glamour to live in life. It's something about the simple pleasures that mean a lot more to people. So now a lot of Quakers have now been arrested and they're in jail. So let's move on to our next thing that we're going to talk about. And that is William Penn is, of course, arrested again. And this time William Penn goes on trial. This time, William Penn goes on trial. So William Penn I think I need a deeper marker for that. So William Penn is again arrested. But this time he is trial. And now we're talking about 1670. That's when the trial was, 1670. Now remember, Penn wrote his first pamphlet in 1668. That was the first pamphlet, and that's when he was jailed, was in 1668. So that's the first pamphlet. So now he was arrested again. He was arrested again because he wouldn't recant. No recant. In fact, let me see if I can find the... He was arrested, William Penn was arrested along with a man called William Meade. So there's William Meade. We'll add that to our list of people. So William Meade was also arrested with him. Penn was accused of preaching to a gathering in the street. So he was preaching. A little bit like what we see today. When we're walking down the road, you might see someone standing on the corner talking about how the world's going to end and all that. That's probably similar to what William Penn was doing at the time. So William Penn now was arrested, and he goes on trial. And when William Penn goes on trial, William Penn decides that I want to see the charges that are pending. I have that right, or think I should. I should know what I'm being charged with. And the Lord Mayor, who would have been like the district attorney who was overseeing the case, said no. You can't see your charges, and you can put on no defense. So what the Lord Mayor would do is he would go up and he would lay out to a jury, and there was a jury, picked all by the Crown, would lay out the specifics of the case, and the jury would, after very little deliberations, would come back with a verdict. So William Penn couldn't lay on a defense. He couldn't see any of the charges that were pending before him. So it looked pretty bleak. It probably looked like William Penn was going to go down. And the Lord Mayor Now, the Lord Mayor, I don't think anyone knows who the Lord Mayor was at that time, but the Lord Mayor at that time urged the jury, instructed the jury, to find guilt. Whether William Penn would have had a lawyer, he possibly could have afforded an attorney and may have had one. But also being a Quaker, he may have thought that I got God on my side. You know I did nothing right, and I'm going to let it in the hands of these people. But he may have had an attorney, we don't know. But the jury came back with a verdict. And Lord Mayor didn't like it. It was a not guilty verdict. The jury found William Penn not guilty. Now, could you imagine finding William Penn not guilty? What reverberation that had, what waves that made around London. And particularly how it depended on the crown. I'm sure it caused a great ruckus. If you remember back to some other verdicts like George Zimmerman or O.J. Simpson, some of those big verdicts that created ripple effects, created waves, got people heated. That's probably what happened here. So, what the Lord Mayor did is he went back to the jury. And he said, I want you to reconsider. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you to reconsider your verdict. And they said, oh no. So the Lord Mayor threw the jury in prison. That's what you do. We're going to throw you in jail over the night. And I think that once you're in jail overnight, I think you'll come to a right decision as to what you should do. So the jury was fighting their case from prison, and it became known as the Bushels case. The Bushels case. And it managed to win the right for all English juries to be free from the control of judges. So no judge could deny a jury the verdict. Whatever the verdict was, the jury came back and said not guilty. When the people were saying guilty, or when the Crown was saying guilty, that verdict stands. It doesn't get quashed. It stands. The case was one of the more important trials that shaped the future of American freedom and was a victory for the use of the writ of habeas corpus, which means the freeing of those unlawfully detained. Now, William Penn and his father didn't always see eye to eye. And as I said, William Penn at this time the senior Penn was very sick. And he wanted to see William Penn to heal the rift. The old man had gained the respect of his son's integrity, and said, and I love this quote. The quote says, "Let nothing in this world tempt you to wrong your conscience." And after that, William Penn really became a big proponent of the pursuit of justice. That everyone deserves a fair trial, a jury of his peers, and every right that is afforded to him. And I think that is very basic. That is where we all stand in the precipice of William Penn. Now, William Penn was found not guilty. He's moving on. But William Penn continues to agitate. Again, going back to what his father said, which is to let nothing go against your conscience, William Penn is saying, I'm going to continue till I get something done. So William Penn continued to agitate and he continued to be arrested. He was arrested several more times. I don't believe how many more times, but though in 1672 he was arrested for 6 months on charges against the crown. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to leave it at that. I'm just going to kind of wrap up a little bit. Tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about Penn's Charter. This is a paper version. If you go to the state archives, generally the first weekend in March, the archives will actually bring out the original Penn's Charter. And they'll have a imitation of William Penn there to answer people's questions. But it's the real charter that they bring out. They only bring it out one time a year. It's very fragile. But you can also buy a printed copy that you can actually read the charter. But every state museum, usually the first weekend in March, every museum that is state-run offers free admission for the weekend. Last year, I've gone to the State Museum in Harrisburg many times to see the state charter. Last year, for a change, I went to Landis Valley Farms here in Landisville, Pennsylvania, here in Lancaster County. I had not been there since I was in like 2nd or 3rd grade. So it was nice to go back to that. But it's nice to see Penn's Charter. They have a replica out all the time. But they actually bring out the real charter, which is a real asset. So tomorrow we're going to talk about the founding of Pennsylvania. We're going to talk about this man and his vision for the future. And really forward-thinking man. So I hope you join me tomorrow when we talk about the founding of Pennsylvania and start to talk about the real foundations of Pennsylvania government. And we're going to start talking about this fundamental document called the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So please join me again tomorrow as we again talk about this very interesting and fascinating subject of William Penn and the founding of Pennsylvania and the laying down of a frame of government. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you all. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.